Hey, what's up everyone? This is Kyle, also known as Simulation Lab here in Brooklyn, New York. And we're back again with another 3D Studio Max tutorial. It's been a little while since I made one of these. I've been doing a lot of game development related stuff recently, using specifically the Unity game engine. So if you're interested in game dev related stuff, I might start sharing some tutorials and some goofy games and stuff that I've been making here on the channel. And another thing is I might be starting a Discord. I try to answer as many comments and questions and stuff in the comment sections of these videos as I can, but it might be more helpful for people to just converse with each other on a Discord server. So if you're interested in a Discord, I might put one together and share a link potentially in the description. So I'll figure that out. But if you're interested in you know, being a part of this sort of community and being able to talk with other people that are pretty much potentially doing the same thing as you guys are, which is learning 3ds Max or learning whatever, the stuff that I'm teaching on the channel, might just be easier for you guys to talk amongst each other and with me. So I'll put that together and I'll let you guys know once the Discord is live. Anyway, so let's get into this tutorial. So this is a tutorial that I've been wanting to make for a while. I've had a few requests to do this kind of thing, and it's a lighting tutorial. Specifically how to light an architectural scene, like an interior scene. I might do a separate video on how to properly light an exterior scene for like daytime and nighttime. Also, I've been thinking about doing like a product lighting tutorial, like lighting a specific object rather than like a scene, like an interior space like this. But regardless, there's a ton of different ways to light an interior scene, like an architectural scene. And if you're already doing architectural visualization using 3ds Max or any other software, lighting is key, right? Lighting is what sells the image. You can spend a ton of time on making all of the geometry and the materials like really perfect. But if the lighting sucks, then the whole scene just kind of falls apart, right? So lighting is extremely important. And so we're going to look at 3 key ways, 3 different methods of lighting an interior scene, right? And the different sort of like lighting hierarchies you can use and stuff. So we'll get into that in a minute. But you can download this project. There's the 3ds Max project files. It's a zip file. I'll leave a link in the description. And basically the scene is super simple. It's just just some walls that I put together, and like these the window and floor trims and stuff and all that are just basically just a polyline that's that has a sweep modifier on it. And I just drew a little profile and stuff. If you're interested in how to model, just general stuff, I do have a how to model anything in 3ds Max tutorial, so I'll leave a link for that as well, but you can probably find it on the channel. And also, if you're super new to 3ds Max, I definitely recommend the 3ds Max crash course that I have. It's a couple years old, but it's still pretty relevant, and people seem to like it. So yeah, anyway, so you could download the project files in the description and follow along if you'd like. The project doesn't have any lights in it. It's basically just like this scene right here. All of these assets they're just free assets from 3D Sky, so they're royalty free. And if you haven't ever been to 3D Sky, it's really cool. You can search for anything like a chair or something, and then you can click on free. And then so there's a ton of awesome free assets on this website. And the free ones are royalty free, so you can swap out whatever scene elements that you want with within this scene and make it your own. Do something fun with it. So yeah, so let's discuss the 3 methods of lighting an interior scene. The first method is by using an HDRI image. So we're gonna look at that method first. It's very simple. But sometimes it needs some secondary lights to help, make the scene feel a little bit more alive. Because an HDRI map can light the scene properly, can give some color to the lighting inside, and it might not be exactly what you want. And so regardless, we'll look at that method first. The second method we're going to look at is just lighting it with just straight up V-Ray lights, just lights, right? And then the third method is we're going to switch those lights to light portals and then use a V-Ray Sun, right? And so the V-Ray Sun has completely different characteristics than just the typical lights. So it has maybe a little harsher shadows, has a different, totally different feel. So we're going to look at those three methods, and then along the way, maybe we'll do some, cool post-processing effects and stuff. All right, so let's jump into it. So the first method we're going to be looking at is by using an HDRI map, right? And so the way that we use an HDRI map is if you type 8 on your keyboard, it's going to pull up the environment and effects panel, right? And if you don't have that panel, if the 8 key for whatever reason doesn't work, or if it's mapped to something else, you can go to rendering and environment, right? Pull that up. And so if you click on this environment map here, if you scroll down and under the V-Ray tab here, under your maps, right? V-Ray, because we're going to be using V-Ray as a rendering engine for this tutorial. And I have a few things to say about V-Ray. I'm not particularly a huge fan of it because it's very complex for beginners, but we're going to be doing everything as simple as possible, and you'll have the settings already kind of set up in the project files. So for our purposes, it should be pretty straightforward. Anyway, so what we're going to want to find is the V-Ray HDRI, right? So if you double click on that, it'll add it to your environment map channel here. And then we need to get inside of this and assign the HDRI map to it, right? So what we could do is bring up our material editor. And I already have some materials in here from the scene, but what we want to do is grab this and we'll just drag and drop it to an empty slot, right? And then we're going to want to instance it. We're going to copy it to this slot as an instance. So click OK. Cool. So now we have access to the HDRI map for this channel, right? So now in this bitmap slot, what we want to do is we'll click in here, and in the project folder, in the folder that is in the link in the description, I added an HDRI map. All right. So if you find this, it's called HDR. It's Garden Nook 8K. And I downloaded this. This is a free HDRI map from HDRI Haven, right? So this is the link here, HDRI-Haven, and there's a ton of really good HDRI maps in here, and they're all free. And if you like, if you really like some of these HDRI maps, I think there's a location somewhere where you can donate some money to the people that are putting these together, and they're all really good. So I found one that I liked, and I included it in this zip folder here. So it's Garden Nook 8K, right? It's an 8K image, so it's pretty big. So we'll go ahead and open that, and then you can see it shows up in our little map slot here. And then we want to, for the mapping type, we want to change that to spherical because it's a spherical image, right? And then we'll leave all of these settings the way they are for right now, and then we'll kind of just see how this looks, right? So what we're going to want to do is pull up our render settings here, and we'll kind of just leave everything default. I already set up some of this stuff, so we don't have to spend too much time with the render settings, but you can feel free to go through this stuff. Basically, I set up global illumination. There's an irradiance map. I set up some settings in here. And we're using light cache, and it's all pretty much default. Okay, so under V-Ray, the V-Ray tab here, under IPR options, you can do start IPR, right? And that'll start your sort of interactive production renderer, or whatever it's called. So this will pop up, and it's basically like a low res, sort of interactive view of what the scene is going to look like when it's rendered. So you can see the HDRI map is producing light in the scene. We have some like these little light splotches that are coming in through through the trees or whatever, but it's not very good resolution. But regardless, we'll kind of play around with this. So in our material editor, we'll kind of scroll down here, and we'll just kind of play around with this scene, because I know that the other side of this scene, has some trees and stuff. So I kind of want to like show some of that in through the windows. So I'll kind of like drag this around, and 24 looks kind of good. So we'll see what this starts to look like. For interior scenes, it's a little difficult to light an interior scene with an HDRI map. I mean, you can do it, but sometimes there's like these weird artifacts and stuff. A couple of ways to get rid of that is to increase the gamma. So you can increase the gamma to like 2.2, and that'll just soften everything up. But you'll kind of lose some of the fidelity of the image like through the windows, so it might not be like the coolest look that you want. And then the render multiplier, we can increase that to like, I don't know, 4 or something, or 6. You know, so with nothing else in the scene, with no lights, you can light a scene like this with an HDRI map. You know, that's like the one simple way to do it, right? So it's starting to look pretty cool, and with some, you know, secondary lights, we can get this to look pretty cool, right? So just for now, what we'll do is we'll stop this, and we'll tap 8 to get our environment settings back. And for just for now, we'll just clear this out, and we'll just leave the background as white, right? So if we hit our IPR, obviously nothing's going to happen. We're just going to have a white scene, and it is still being lit with that because there is some, you know, ambient lighting going on outside. And but again, it's super boring, right? So we want to make this look like a daytime, you know, daylit scene, right? So that's going to lead us up to our next method, is lighting it with just simple V-Ray lights, right? So we'll stop this. We'll close out all of this stuff because we don't really need it for right now, and we'll open up our our layer explorer here. And in the layers here, I already set up a cam and lights layer, so that's where we're going to be putting all of our lights. And so we'll just close this out for now, and then I'll hit you know, Alt W to get back out to the scene here. And I already set up these views and stuff, so a little easy to navigate. So I'll click Create Lights, and then drop down to V-Ray. You guys probably won't have some of these other options. Arnold comes default with Max. If you guys are interested in using the default rendering engines like, you know, the standard, there's the art renderer now, and there's Arnold, right? So if you guys are interested in using Arnold, I could do a separate tutorial on just specifically Arnold. Arnold's a great rendering engine, but V-Ray has just way more features and stuff, and I just like it better. But anyway, F-Storm is also an excellent rendering engine, but it's a GPU-based rendering engine, so not everyone has an awesome GPU, like an awesome graphics card. So for these tutorials, I'm going to stop using F-Storm. Unless you guys are interested, let me know. Anyway, so drop down to V-Ray, and we'll click on V-Ray Light. All right. And make sure the type is set to plain, and we'll just go ahead and just drag out plain out, and just kind of cover one of these windows for right now, and we'll just copy this stuff around. Cool. So we'll go ahead and pull this out, and we want to set this right on the outside of the window, right? Cool. And then we can either mirror that, or we could just do like a quick rotate on that. It doesn't really matter. Cool. So that's our first window, and what we'll do is in the multiplier, we'll set the multiplier to something like 44. Sure. And then for now, we'll just leave all of these options default. And then what I'm going to do is maybe in top view here, I'll just hold shift and drag and just create a duplicate of that. We'll just instance that one here, and then I'll rotate it to match the angle of this window here. Again, this model isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, it makes for a pretty decent scene. So we'll just angle that a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Yeah, pull that out just a slight amount so it's not intersecting the geometry. I don't want any artifacts. All right, cool. So we'll do the same thing here. Instance that, and then we'll maybe just mirror this on the y-axis, and then pull that one back directly from the window. Cool. So now we have those lights set up. I want another light here. This is going to kind of be like a background light. It's going to splash some light into the scene. So I'll just grab this one here, and I'll hold shift and I'll grab this and I'll put that one over here. And what I'm going to do is just make a copy of that, because I might want to adjust that one separately. This one might be a little bit more dim, maybe something like 40. Okay, so that one's just a copy. And then I just want to make sure that's big enough. That should be fine. And then we'll make one more, and we'll put that over here. So there's this big old, there's like this big opening. We'll just clone this as a copy and put that one up here. So as you can see, there's a big opening right here, and I didn't put any detail in this. I mean, you can add detail and do whatever you want. If you want to make an animation of this or something, you're going to want to add more detail. But for now, I didn't really do that. So I'll just kind of increase this and let some light just splash in there like that. And we want to make sure we can't see that from the camera. But you know what we can do is a little trick. We could just click on this invisible button in the options. So if you check invisible, that's not going to be visible to the camera, which is good, just in case there's any, you know, reflections or anything that's going on. We don't want anything that we're not in control of, right? And we'll leave that, I guess, at 40. We'll kind of just see how that looks, right? So with this scheme, with just lighting everything straight up with just planes going through the windows, it should offer like a pretty soft light, kind of like a morning light. And we can, of course, adjust the color of a lot of these lights too, and we'll kind of look at that and what that feels like. So with that setup, you know, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick save on that, just in case. You know, you never know. Once you start that renderer up, sometimes there's crashes can happen and stuff. So it's always a good idea to just kind of periodically save your stuff. So this scheme, lighting everything with just straight up standard lights, is a very typical, very common practice in architectural visualization. You know, I've been doing ArcViz for over a decade now, and it's very lucrative. So if you're interested in doing architectural renderings, it just takes practice. You have to get really, you know, you have to get good at setting up your lights, right? So this is a very like simplified version of like how to do a basic lighting scheme. You just put lights in all the windows, right? So it's pretty easy. You can play around with doing secondary lights behind the camera, and you know, we're probably going to put like a secondary light underneath this light here to splash some light on the table, which could look cool. But just for now, we'll just see how this looks, right? So we'll fire up our renderer, and already that's pretty bright, right? But it's looking pretty cool. So what we'll do is we'll kind of bring down the intensity of some of these lights. Let's bring this down to like 40. So that's looking pretty bright. So let's close this stuff out for right now. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of these lights, and under effect diffuse, let's set these down to like 0.24, something like that. Yeah, so that one should be fine. That other one back here is still going to be super bright. So let's bring this guy down to 30 or so. And effect diffuse 0.24. Let's just set that value up for right now, and we'll see how this looks. 0.24 on this one. And let's set with this 36 or so. And that's again this little light that's right here. This one on the side. So I set that one down to 36, and the same thing. Effect diffuse 0.24. Let's see how that looks. So start IPR. Okay, already that's looking way better. And it's our kind of dark back there, so I might increase that one a little bit. But let's see how this plays out. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So the intensity on these can increase a little bit. We might want to add a secondary light in front of the windows. I think that'd be cool. And we'll increase the intensity of this one back here. So I'll stop this for now. I'll just drag this over to my other screen. And I'll grab this and this light back here. Maybe we'll just make it a little wider. A little wider, a little taller. And I'll set this to 40. Right. And then we'll leave these lights, I think I set them at 40. Yeah, we'll leave these lights, maybe we'll just do like 42 and see how that looks. So again, with this kind of stuff, like it's just kind of, you have to tweak it and see how it plays out. Like already this is looking a little bit more dynamic, right? I want this to be a little brighter back there. So I might even crank that up a little higher. Because you can imagine there'd be like a big window or something on the opposite wall of this room. So I want that to splash a little bit more light through there, you know. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. I'm gonna put a secondary light right here in front of the windows, and then we'll, you know, what we'll do is we'll increase. Oopsie. Okay, increase that light here until it starts making sense. 45, maybe something like 50. Yeah, that's looking better. Okay, cool. And then I'll stop this, put this over here, and then what I'll do is I'll grab one of these lights, maybe like this one, and I'll put it inside the room, right? Now it's a little different. So this is going to be a secondary light that's just going to blast some light in to the space and just kind of brighten things up. So I'm going to make this a little wider, a little shorter, like that, and I'll drag this in a little bit further, maybe a little up. Okay. And then I'm going to set this one to be invisible, right? And we'll drag that further, a little further into the space. That should be fine. Let's see how that looks. Okay. That should definitely help brighten things up. It's probably going to be too bright now. Actually, that looks pretty good. You don't want to like blast too much light from the windows, then it gets a little bit too, you know, you just kind of burn it. But that's looking pretty good. You see how dynamic it is? You know, we have a lot of dark materials. There's some splashes of color and stuff. You know, typically I would probably want to bring in this camera just a little closer. This is not really part of the lighting scheme, but you know, bring that field of view just a little bit. That's too much. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Yeah, so you guys could play with the camera settings and stuff. I have a camera correction modifier on this camera. Basically just like adjusts the tilt of the camera lens. So basically all of the straight vertical lines are like remain vertical. And that's really important for architectural renderings, right? You want to make sure that all of your vertical lines are always vertical, right? Because if there's any kind of skew or anything going on, that just makes the image look kind of weird. Yeah, so that's a pretty good looking image. I'm pretty happy with that. If we render that at full resolution, I'm sure it'll look awesome, right? Okay, so real quick before we hop into the next method, I wanted to show you guys a quick little fun post-processing thing that you can do. Let's say if we hit 8. Okay, so what we want to do is, let's say for instance, if your client or you want to make the rendering look less real, a little bit more sketchy. Sometimes clients request for the image not to look so perfect, right? Especially when early design is like an early design is in play, right? If they have a particular client that they're producing these renderings for, let's say for instance if you're doing these renderings for an architect or an interior designer or something, and they don't want them to look so final, right? One thing you can do is add a cool little post-processing effect that's super easy, and you can do it in the atmosphere channel here, and it's called V-Ray Tune, right? So if you add a V-Ray Tune effect here, I'll show you what this looks like. So we'll start up our IPR, and this usually starts showing up after the light cache pass, so you'll start seeing it in a second here. Basically what this does is give you like outlines on everything, which is really neat. And you can even render this as a separate channel and overlay it and post if you wanted to or something. But you can see like how it looks kind of like a sketch. It looks a little sketchy, which is really fun. So like this is just for a complete side tangent. If you have like the lighting scheme down, if you really like it, you can add this layer on top of it and make it look a little bit more like sketchy, like a little bit more cartoony. Okay, so I'll stop that. And then we'll look at our third lighting scheme, right? So I'll close this stuff down. I'll just move this over here. And our third lighting scheme is going to involve taking all of the lights that we created and turning them into Skylight Portals, right? So I think we'll do for this is we'll set up a separate, so what I'll go ahead and I'll just create a separate layer, I guess, like in here. And I'll call this lights, maybe like lights like ambient or something. I don't know. Lights ambient. We'll just put everything in here. I'll drag everything into lights ambient, right? And then we'll create another. Oops. We'll create another folder here, and we'll just call this lights sun or something, right? And what we'll do is I'll just pop this open. I'll grab all of these lights that we just created. I'll right click and I'll clone them, and I'll clone them as a copy. Yeah, I'll clone all of those as a copy, right? And then I'll just drag and drop those into the lights sun folder, right? So now what we'll do is we'll hide the lights ambient. So that's our previous lighting scheme. So we can always go back to it if we want to, because we're going to modify all these lights. And we'll just keep these in the lights sun, right? So now just make sure that the lights sun layer is active, and we can close out our layers manager here. One thing we got to do real quick is in our render settings. So if you click on this button, render setup, in the V-Ray tab under global switches, make sure that hidden lights is unchecked, right? Make sure that's unchecked, because if that's checked, then all of the lights, even if they're hidden, are going to affect the rendering, and we don't want that. Cool. So uncheck that, and we can just move that over to the side for now. And what we'll do is we'll start going around and modifying these lights. So all of these lights are going to be Skylight Portals now. So I'll click Skylight Portal, and I'll show you what this does in a second. And so this is Skylight Portal. This one. All of these are instance, so they should all be Skylight Portals. And then this one is the only other one that's not an instance, so that's going to be Skylight Portal as well. Cool. What a Skylight Portal does, I mean, if we try to render this right now, I'll show you what this looks like. Skylight Portal looks very much similar to when we were messing around with the HDRI map, right? When we took off the HDRI map, it was just like rendering it from the color of the the environment slot, and it was just like a off-white color or whatever. So there's not much going on. It's producing light in the scene, but there's no skylight yet, right? And so what I'm going to do is in our top view, what I'll do is let's put this over here for now. We don't need that. Under create, under lights, under V-Ray, we'll do a V-Ray sun, right? So we'll stick a V-Ray sun in our scene. Basically, you just drag and drop the. This is going to be like the sort of like target for the sun. Sorry about that. It's Brooklyn. There's always honking outside. And it's going to ask us, V-Ray sun, would you like to automatically add a V-Ray sky environment map? Sure, right? Because we can always bring back our HDRI map if we want. So okay, I'll click OK. And so we got that in there. And I'll just kind of place this over here. And I think I want the sun to kind of splash some light inside the scene. I doubt it's going to be able to hit this wall back there, but we can play around with that. We can adjust this. So I'll just drag this up a little bit right there. And then we're just going to render this exactly how the scene is currently, and then we'll make some adjustments to that sun, right? So I'll just pop open my modify tab there just for
future use, and then we'll drag over our render setup, settings, and start the IPR. We'll see what this looks like. Okay, so already you can tell that the lighting scheme is completely different, right, than using the ambient lights, right? And I like that. I think it's interesting. It makes for a more dynamic image, but maybe you or your client just absolutely hates harsh shadows, and that's perfectly okay. A lot of architectural renderings, if you look at any, Architectural Digest or whatever, any magazines or whatever that you subscribe to, if you're an interior designer or something, most of them will have like a soft ambient light because that makes the products in the environment and the scene look way softer and just easier on the eyes. So having harsh shadows like this might not be ideal. But regardless, we'll play around with this scheme and see if we can make it look pretty cool, right? So we still have that secondary light on right here. So what I can do is I can grab this and I can just turn it off. We can just hide it for now. And the skylight does have like a warmer hue to it, which is pretty cool. If you want that kind of light quality or something, you can adjust the color of the ambient lights from the previous scheme, right? Or you can use a sun like this. I mean, it's, and now you have full control. I mean, it is kind of splashing sunlight on that back wall, which is kind of cool. I mean, it makes for a dynamic image, right? So what I'll do is I'll stop this and then I'll adjust the sun angle. Maybe we'll just do like a little bit less of that, a little bit above head, and then we'll bring this back, start that up, and we'll adjust some settings. So that's looking pretty balanced. I mean, it's looking pretty interesting. It's definitely pretty realistic. But I think what we want to do is see how the shadows are super hard, right? They're very hard lined. What we can do is in our size multiplier of this very sun, so we have the very sun selected, size multiplier, we can increase that to like, I don't know, 6. See what that looks like. That's going to really soften up the edges. You might lose a little bit of like the details in the shadows, but that's what you want. You want to get it a little softer, right? A little softer, so it's not so hard edged. So you can keep increasing that until see how it breaks up a little bit more. It's just a little bit, I don't know, softer, more natural looking, sort of like a springtime light or something that would come through your windows and not just be completely hard like a summer light or something, So you can keep going. You can maybe increase that to 12, kind of just blow it out. And so that's looking a little bit more natural. Kind of let this one cook out. So yeah, so if we were to render this at full resolution, obviously, this is not anywhere close to full resolution, but we can get some pretty decent shadows going on here if we wanted this sort of lighting scheme. And I tend to like this. I think it looks pretty interesting. So it's more dynamic than the ambient light, but your clients might not agree. So yeah, so anyway, so now, it's kind of boring outside the windows. There's a couple things that you can do. You can set up a matte shadow material and apply that to the windows, the window glass. And you can basically create like an alpha channel out of that. So if you're interested in doing that, basically what the end goal for that is to bring this image into Photoshop and then be able to easily crop out the windows, right? And then you can like add the sort of window glass and the reflections and stuff in post. So that's one way of doing it. If you're rendering an animation, you're probably not going to want to do that because that's a huge pain. So you probably wouldn't want to go that method. So another thing you can do if you want to add a background, you can add it in a couple different ways. Either you can add it as a plane, like a static plane, and apply like a background material to it. So basically, if you wanted some trees or something outside, that's the way you can do that, just by applying it to like a plane, right? Another way to do it is with bringing the HDRI map back. So we'll open up our material editor. We still have that in here. So if we type 8, Sometimes the hotkey doesn't work if you have the IPR open, so we'll go under rendering, environment, and we're under V-Ray Sky. What we could do is just drag our HDRI map back. We'll instance that back in here. We're probably going to have to adjust some settings because it's going to blow it out like crazy. So we'll start this back up. Yeah, already the lighting is significantly changed with our HDRI map, but it looks a lot better. I mean, or not better, but it just looks, it looks better with the V-Ray Sun in there, right? Okay, cool. So now we can still see our HDRI map back there. What we could do is bring our gamma back down to 1 if we wanted to, kind of get the full fidelity of that image. And then we can just tweak some stuff. Maybe one on a render multiplier to increase a little bit, maybe something like 10 or something. Just kind of like get it to be a little bit more naturally lit outside, because, you know, if you take a picture of an interior space, the exterior might be a little blown out, and that's pretty natural, right? So that's looking kind of cool. I mean, you can tweak and adjust that. The HDRI map that I chose, probably not the best one for this, but you know, regardless, like if we render this at full resolution, it might look pretty good. We're probably going to want to add some post-processing effects and stuff, maybe some like streaks of light coming in through the windows, because right now it's very not so dynamic as far as like the lighting is concerned. There's no like turbidity in the air or anything, you know, it's just very like super clean. It's not how interior space usually is, right? So you can see how by adding different backgrounds like the HDRI maps, you can get completely different light qualities too. So basically this is combining the first method that we looked at, which you know, lighting the scene with just an HDRI map, with the third option using a sun, right? So we use a sun, we use the Skylight Portals on all the lights, that option, right? And we used an HDRI map just to give it a little bit of color, right? So the scene is introducing the color from the HDRI map into the interior scene, and it's completely different looking, right? So there's a bunch of different ways you can combine these methods together to get like an interesting looking lighting scheme. So okay, so I'm gonna remove my HDRI map just to see how this thing is looking, and I'll kind of run around and find a pass here while we're talking, and it looks pretty horrible. So might want to bring back that V-Ray Sky, because that was looking pretty cool. So we can do under V-Ray, we can do V-Ray Sky, and render that out and see how that looks. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I mean, there's a million different lighting schemes that you guys can play with. Have fun with the scene files, and let me know if you guys come up with something cool. Feel free to swap out all of these assets and make it your own scene, you know, and now that hopefully, you know, this allows you, it gives you a chance to study some of the rendering settings that are used in the scene. These are settings that I use all the time in architectural stuff. And if you guys have any questions about anything related to lighting, feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. If you guys like the video, you know what to do. You know, hit the like button and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. Plan on making a lot more tutorials this year. Some 3ds Max and some more, you know, game dev related stuff, like I said at the beginning of the video. But anyway, if you guys have any questions, even if it's about the business of doing architectural renderings as a sort of like side gig, or you know, if you want to do it professionally, there's a lot to learn, a lot of different rendering engines out there, but it can be very lucrative if you do it right. Another thing you can do with this particular scene is what we didn't do is add some secondary or tertiary lighting behind the camera, or you know, around the scene to give it a little bit more dynamic quality. One thing we didn't do is put a light in the pendant light right here in the lamp. We could have some light shine down on the table, which would be pretty cool. We could do a nighttime scene. You know, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that you guys can play with. But anyway, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to leave a comments in the section below, and I'll get back to you guys. thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.